We are in the middle of a hotly contested provincial election, and we want to hear from all of the Lethbridge candidates. Today, joining me in studio is incumbent MLA with us, Maria Fitzpatrick, the NDP candidate for Lethbridge East. Welcome to Bridge City News, Maria.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
That's awesome. Okay, how has the campaigning been going so far? You're knocking on those doors. What are people telling you? What are the big issues?
Okay, so people talk always about healthcare, about wait times, about education, smaller class sizes, jobs, diversifying our economy. They want to hear what's going on. They have lots of ideas that they share with me. And I hear a lot of positive responses on the door about people really like what we've done over the last 4 years and encourage me to continue with that.
What about pipelines? I mean, can the current government really help in that regard too? With pipelines? Because as you know, with Alberta, we like to reinvent ourselves a little bit with greener technology, but we're still a lot of oil and gas. It's a big part of our identity here.
It certainly is. And as I'm sure you know, Rachel Notley has been fighting right from the beginning to get those pipelines built to Tidewater. Everyone in this province knows that we have to get better value for our product. And Rachel has been working to the limit trying to make that happen. And certainly our entire party is behind her doing that. That's why we've been really steadfast in terms of the feds have to get their job done so that we can get our job done.
Now, what about the hotly debated carbon tax? Is it actually reducing emissions? Is it having much of a tangible effect on global warming? I mean, we're a pretty small polluter when we talk, especially the world. You know, when you've got the Indias, the Chinas, and the United States who are out there, right?
Well, I certainly think the entire world needs to do better, but we are doing our job. Ever since the Climate Leadership Plan was implemented, we've reduced our emissions by 7 megatons. That's huge. To put it in perspective, that's 1/3 of what Manitoba's entire emissions are.
Now, what do you say to the critics who argue that the carbon tax is actually making Alberta less competitive in the global economy, considering so many countries, Maria, they don't have a carbon levy?
Okay, so I'm going to use an example right here in Lethbridge, and that's Cavendish Farms. Cavendish came in knowing that we had a carbon levy and absolutely looked at other markets other than right here in Lethbridge. In fact, North Dakota was being considered. They came here, and they came here because we have an $11 billion tax advantage over just about any other jurisdiction. We have no provincial sales tax. We are an ideal place for a company to come. They invested right at the beginning, knowing we had a carbon levy, $258 million. Now, they have continued to invest, and we are now pushing about $500 million. Private investment, and we have a carbon levy.
Now, you talked about Alberta not having a provincial sales tax. Has there been any talk within the caucus, within the NDP, potentially implementing one to help with a lot of the deficit that we have right now and the debt that just keeps on piling on and on?
No. That's a simple answer. We are not talking about a sales tax.
Okay. Now, every election, governments like to throw money at healthcare. But you know what, Maria? I've noticed that the wait times are still very long at hospitals. And let's look at a city the size of Lethbridge, 100,000 people. We have one cardiologist. What can we do to address the issue of the shortage of specialists in our city?
Well, certainly I think we've got to encourage specialists to come here. Lethbridge is an incredible city to live in, and we need to encourage people. But people don't know what Lethbridge is like.
So how do we do that, do you think?
Well, I think I've certainly done my part to do that. And if you want to check Hansard, you can see how many times I said I love Lethbridge and why I love Lethbridge in the Alberta legislature. I talk about it at many different places. I've spoken at forums across the country, and I've talked about how much I love Lethbridge and why I love Lethbridge. It is an incredible city. It has a diversity that I don't think other cities in Alberta have. And we have an economy that spreads right across southern Alberta. And I would say that Lethbridge is certainly an area that helped maintain our equilibrium during the recession. Lethbridge felt very little in terms of the recession because we've got a diversified economy.
Okay, let's say I'm an oncologist, cancer doctor, and you want to encourage me to move to Lethbridge. I mean, yes, it's nice that you have a passion about your city, right? It's affordable, it's beautiful here. But what else can the NDP offer to encourage me to move to Lethbridge?
Okay, so I've actually had conversations with different groups of doctors here in the city, and in fact had a conversation with Dr. Zilke, who's the cardiologist that we have here, about a cath lab. And we've provided that information to the health minister because we know that we need to move forward and we need to have those kinds of services here. I've talked to the anesthesiologist about having a pain management clinic, which would actually help in terms of the opioid crisis. So there are many things. There are many people have chosen to come to Lethbridge because they've heard a little bit about it. The weather here is way better than anywhere else in the province, and there's lots of amenities, and it's still small town. You can get from one side of the town to the other in 15 minutes, east or west, north or south, and people like that, especially people who've lived in bigger cities, have done their education in bigger cities, and we have a university and a college here. So if they're coming here and they have children, they know that they can be educated right here without leaving town.
And it's a lot more affordable too than a lot of the bigger cities,
It
right?
certainly is.
You could still buy a nice house for under $300,000.
You certainly can.
Yeah. Now, what about, let's talk about childcare. And the NDP made some recent announcements about expanding childcare. Can you share a bit with our viewers about that?
Okay, so first of all, everybody that I've spoken to that has children is ecstatic about that announcement. There are a number of people who had kids in the $25 a day child care spaces, and there were other parents who just didn't happen to be in the right facility and they didn't get that. This announcement means every single child in Alberta has access to a child care space at $25 a day.
But what about some of the rural areas? That's where people have concerns. Not just
Well,
the cities, right?
The announcement is every child in Alberta should have access to a $25 a day childcare space. And I have to say, from my personal perspective, my older daughter is in her 40s, and when she was a baby, and I had to work because I was a single parent, and I had to put a roof over our head, I had to put food on the table, and to find an affordable, quality childcare space was virtually impossible. So I've done that for my children looking for it, I've done that for my grandkids, and now I'm doing it for my great-granddaughter, finding a space that's affordable and where she can go, and I know she's going to be looked after properly.
Let's talk about older children who are in classes now in school. Many teachers I've spoken with are concerned about class size, you know, the student per teacher ratio right now. What's being done to address that? What are some of the concerns you're hearing from teachers as well?
Okay, so certainly teachers do talk about class sizes. In the past 4 years, we have funded for enrollment, which means that we actually have 4,000 more teachers in Alberta than we did in 2015. And a part of that is about the number of kids in the class. I think that we can do better. We have to do better. And we have committed to funding for enrollment. In this coming year, we are expecting 15,000 new students in school. We have to have the teachers to support those kids in school, and we are adamant that we will do that. And I mean, the opposition has said they're going to make a huge cut, $4.5 billion. Where do you think that's going to be cut? Teachers, nurses, doctors, hospitals.
You
we
know,
can't go there.
Speaking of the opposition, the UCP announced that they would go back to the 2014 Alberta Education Act, which still allows for GSA clubs in school, but does allow teachers to let parents know if their child joins a GSA. A lot of parents I've talked to say, you know what, I want to know if my child has joined a GSA. I'm the parent of this child.
Okay.
I should know more than a teacher should,
Okay.
right?
So
That's their concern.
first of all,
Yeah.
I want every single child in school to be safe. And what GLBTQ2S kids have said to me, again, over and over again, is that they want a place where they can go and they can feel safe and supported. I've asked them about the rights of their parents, about their parents knowing, and they have said they want to tell their parents when they are ready to tell their parents, but in the meantime, they need a supportive environment. And I know parents love their kids. I know I never told my mom about being on the basketball team because she wasn't keen about me doing sports. And in fact, once I was playing sports, she was a little better with it, but I wasn't ready to tell her that's what I was doing. I love sports, and for me, it helped me be a better student. So I think if kids are feeling supported, they're actually going to do better in school. And I know that at some point when they tell their parents how they're feeling, that their parents will support them.
Why do you think a child would be more apt to tell a teacher as opposed to a parent who raised them and has loved them and nurtured them since birth?
Okay, so the kids that have spoken to me
Yeah.
told me that they were concerned that their parents would reject them if they told them. And as a parent, I can't imagine anybody rejecting their child.
Of course not.
But the truth is the perception of that person. And if those kids have that perception, then we have to allow them to be ready to share that information so that the parents can be supportive.
What about the parents who say the GSA clubs are a nice, safe environment for those in the LGBTQ2+ community? Seems to be getting longer, but you know, they feel safe, but at the same time, they're maybe bringing in or implementing an ideology that doesn't align with our beliefs. You know, how our children were raised at home. So maybe parents are concerned about that. So how do you address those concerns?
Well, again, I think that children that are joining GSAs are doing it because they are looking for a supportive environment, and where other people are feeling the same way that they are. To be very honest, I think that parents have to they have to understand that kids aren't going to tell them everything right away. And if there's a discussion about the way they've been brought up or religious beliefs, then when the kids share that with their parents, that's a time when the kids are ready to have that conversation with their parents. But I've always believed that people need to be respected. And I think GSAs gives kids an opportunity to feel respected and to talk about what their concerns are and why they haven't shared with their parents.
It's funny you bring up
Yeah.
respect, because the parents I've talked to said they feel disrespected because they're not being told. But anyway, we'll leave that at that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the pre-election goodies, the spending. I mean, Transport Minister Brian Mason was in town recently,
Yes.
$100 million for the bridge.
That's right.
Going to be constructed in 2022. Maria, let's talk. What other pre-election goodies can we look forward to seeing here leading up to the April 16th election?
Okay, so the Premier was here last week and
Yeah.
announced 2,000 more long-term care beds.
Yeah, we got that.
And when in 2015, when we announced we'd do 2,000, in fact, we've done a little bit more than 2,000. I don't think we realized how many more beds were going to be needed, but in doing this process and in getting those beds in place, we realized that there's a whole demographic that are moving into this area that will require long-term care beds. So I'm really happy about that announcement. I'm a senior, and I mean, I hope that I'm not going to need to access a long-term care bed for a while, but I am part of that demographic, and I talk to lots of people. I'm a member at Lethbridge, so I see seniors all the time who talk to me about finding a space.
Any good crib tournaments going on there, or bridge?
Well, there's an absolutely fabulous jam session at Norbridge on Monday morning at 9:30.
Oh, there you
so you really should go check it out.
Okay.
Yes.
NDP is promising to spend $1.4 billion to build new roads across Alberta and an escape route for Fort McMurray area residents. Let's chat a bit about that too, supporting some of the infrastructure in our province.
Okay, so first of all, Fort McMurray needs that additional road out of there, as we saw during the fire.
Yeah.
Infrastructure has been in deficit for quite some time, and we have begun to take care of that infrastructure. Certainly our bridge over the Old Man River on Highway 3 is part of that. Schools, all kinds of things that need to be done that were on the books for years and hadn't been done, and probably should have been done during times of boom and weren't. So now we're left with this deficit, and we're trying to address that deficit. We need that money. I hear from the county over and over again about the roads in the county that are their responsibility. The bridges that are in the county that are sustaining weights that the bridges were never built for. So there is certainly a large deficit, and we've been going through it. We've completed or renovated or built 244 new schools. So that's a pretty huge number, and in fact we've got 5 in Lethbridge that are either new or refurbished that we've completed during this tenure. And I should say we haven't completed the one on the southeast yet, but the tenure or the school board has put out the request for bids, and we're expecting that build to happen very soon.
Maria Fitzpatrick, MLA and NDP candidate for Lethbridge East, thanks a lot for joining me in studio today.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.